With $60 million sitting in our bank, you're just excess baggage. Scram from here. Those venomous remarks from my daughter-in-law Christine lingered toxically in the atmosphere as she hurled my garments into a bag, her polished fingernails shredding the material of my cherished shirt during her outburst. Her expression, typically arranged into a facade of courteous endurance when David was present, had morphed into an unfamiliar sight, stripped bare with an avarice and loathing I'd sensed, but never seen so openly exposed before. "Christine, I beg you," I responded, my tone more composed than my inner turmoil suggested. At age 67, I hadn't pictured myself observing my son's spouse of 3 years physically ejecting me from their residence. "We should all take a seat and discuss this rationally." "There's no discussion needed, Lorelei." She hurled my name as if it left a sour flavor in her mouth. "We're wealthy beyond measure now. We have no use for you occupying our spare bedroom any longer. We'll acquire a grand estate complete with servant areas. If fortune favors you, perhaps we'll employ you as the housekeeper." She cackled at her own viciousness, a noise resembling shattering crystal. My son David lingered in the entrance, his features a clash of feelings. Astonishment at his spouse's conduct battling against the alluring prospect of abrupt riches. I scanned his gaze for the young child who used to snuggle into my embrace amid storms. The adolescent who delivered morning meals to my bedside each Mother's Day. The adult who had urged me to reside with them after I disposed of my property to assist with their initial home payment. "Mom," he uttered at last, his words tense. "Perhaps Christine is onto something. With this fortune, we could arrange a splendid setup for you, like one of those upscale retirement villages offering events and medical services." My heart fractured along hidden cracks I hadn't realized were there. My flesh and blood opting for wealth instead of me, selecting his wife's malice over his mom's affection. "You'd send me to an institution," I murmured. "A premium living facility," Christine amended with a casual flick of her hand. "Not that we're obligated to you in any way. It's our prize, our fortune." She motioned toward the lottery slip on the kitchen surface. The one I'd purchased for them as part of our household custom. The one she'd ridiculed as a foolish expense from a gullible elderly lady only the day prior. What Christine remained unaware of, what neither of them realized, was that I'd examined both slips the previous evening once they'd retired. I understood precisely the value of each one. I might have disclosed it right away, unveiled the facts without delay, but an instinct restrained me. Maybe it stemmed from the accumulated insight of nurturing kids solo after losing my husband early. Perhaps it was basic survival. Or maybe it was the soft inner murmur advising, allow them to display their true selves when they believe they no longer require you. Thus, I observed quietly as Christine persisted in clearing out my compartments, her actions becoming more hectic, more aggressive with every ticking second. I witnessed my son's feeble objections fade unspoken as she sketched their upcoming existence of opulence and indulgence. "I've contacted the lock expert already," Christine declared, sealing the overflowing luggage. "He'll arrive later today to replace the locks. You must depart before that." "You're altering the locks on my mom?" David inquired, at last displaying some backbone, albeit hesitant. "Our mom," Christine adjusted with a sugary grin that failed to touch her gaze. "Who requires her personal area to savor her later years as we relish our fortune. It's optimal, darling." While she pulled my bag toward the main entrance, I trailed without a word, an odd serenity enveloping me. Occasionally, fate delivers insight in the least anticipated forms. This dawn, mine had arrived cloaked in disloyalty and 60 million motives for honesty. At the threshold, Christine nearly propelled me onto the veranda, the bag cascading down the trio of stairs to the path. My crochet hooks and partially completed wrap scattered across the pavement. "Christine," David shouted, appalled, yet still not stepping in decisively. It was inevitable. I pivoted to confront them, holding myself more erect than I had in ages. Prior to my departure, I stated softly, "There's an important detail you ought to learn." "Spare us your remorse ploy," Christine retorted sharply. "We're not interested." The victorious slip I cut in, my words gaining strength. "Is truly the one registered to me, my dear. The one under your name secured $500. Their faces stiffened, then disintegrated moment by moment. Christine's arrogant dominance fracturing into skepticism. David's torn expression paling dramatically. I dipped into my pocket and retrieved my device, rotating the display to reveal the lottery site I'd verified multiple times during an insomnia-filled night. "What?" Christine muttered, her tone abruptly diminished. "That's impossible." "Verify it yourselves," I suggested, indicating the slips still on their surface. "Examine the digits thoroughly this time." As the reality struck them, I experienced no elation, no justification, merely a deep sorrow that it required $60 million to uncover what had lurked hidden all this time. I gathered my bag, retrieving my dispersed crochet items with whatever poise I could summon. "I'll stay at the Holiday Inn until I determine my following moves," I remarked, my tone surprisingly stable. "David, you can contact me via mobile if you wish to converse." As I proceeded toward the summoned rideshare, I discreetly requested while Christine rummaged through my space. I heard her scream of fury and hopelessness from behind. I refrained from glancing rearward. Certain perspectives are preferable when viewed in hindsight. $60 million wealthier and in certain aspects profoundly diminished. I had forfeited the fantasy of my son's absolute devotion, but acquired something potentially more precious over time. The unfiltered reality. And reality, unlike kin, never deceives you. The accommodation at the inn seemed both foreign and recognizable. The standard decor evocative of numerous family trips when David was a child, but now colored with the acrid awareness that I was basically without a home at 67. I positioned my rapidly assembled bag on the stand and dropped heavily onto the mattress edge. The morning's occurrences looping endlessly in a tormenting cycle. My device had been vibrating incessantly since my exit from the residence. 14 unanswered calls from David. 3 voice recordings. A barrage of messages varying from urgent pleas to poorly disguised efforts to retract statements now that the monetary dynamics had reversed. "Mom, please return. We must discuss. This is merely a mix-up." Christine didn't intend her words. "We're kin. We can resolve this." Kin. The term weighed like a rock in my torso. For 35 years, I identified chiefly as David's parent. Following Frank's fatal cardiac event when David was merely 7, I'd held dual employment to sustain us, delayed my aspirations, oriented my being around providing my son all chances I could afford. When Elaine emerged 5 years afterward, my unexpected gift amid bereavement, I'd extended myself further to serve as all for both. Now Elaine resided distant, preserving existences as an emergency doctor, too occupied for calls beyond monthly. And David. David had remained passive as his spouse discarded me like discarded refuse, had genuinely proposed an elite elder facility, as though stowing me away would ease his guilt. A rap on the entrance jolted me from my reflections. I neared warily, peering via the viewer to discover David in the corridor, his appearance worn. "Mom," his muffled words penetrated the barrier. "Please, may we converse?" A portion of me desired to disregard him, to permit him to simmer in the repercussions of his passivity. But years of parental drive don't vanish in one dawn, regardless of the agony. I unlatched the entrance, but didn't shift to admit him. "How did you locate me?" I questioned. "I phoned every lodging in the center until I tracked you." He dragged a hand through his locks, a motion so evocative of his dad that my core twisted despite all. "Mom, I'm profoundly apologetic. What Christine executed, what I permitted, it's inexcusable. Yet you're seeking pardon," I noted, eventually retreating to grant him access. He traversed the compact space, avoiding my direct gaze. Christine's frantic. She verified the slip and grasped you spoke truth. She's oscillated between weeping and fury for hours. "And you?" I inquired, crossing my limbs over my chest. "Are you present due to true regret, or because you've discerned which side holds your advantage now?" The frankness of my inquiry appeared to impact him bodily. David had never encountered me expressing thus. I'd perpetually been the mediator, the smoother of conflicts, the sacrificer for harmony. "That's unjust," he commenced, then halted. "No, you're correct to pose that. I let you down today, Mom. Let you down in the most dreadful manner." His words fractured. "I possess no justification." "No, you don't." I concurred, astonishing myself with my firmness. I liquidated my residence, the place where you matured, where each nook contained recollections of your father to aid you and Christine in acquiring your dwelling. I've prepared your dishes, handled your washing, indulged your spouse, even when she scarcely concealed her disdain for me. And at the initial chance, you both cast me aside like an imposed load. David collapsed onto the mattress border, face in palms. I can't fathom what overcame me when Christine began discussing millions. It felt like momentary madness, as if all my principles, all you instilled in me, simply vanished. Wealth doesn't alter individuals, David. It exposes them. What can I accomplish? He queried, gazing up with bloodshot eyes. How do I rectify this? I pondered his inquiry meticulously. The simple reply would be to convey what he desired. That all was absolved. That we'd advance as though this dawn never occurred. That's what the former Lorelei would have pursued. Absorbed the pain, favored tranquility, reduced herself to comfort others. But the lady who had observed her son's wife shed her pretense entirely, who had witnessed her son's integrity falter amid enticement, who now possessed a $60 million victorious lottery slip in her handbag. That lady merited superior. I don't know if rectification is possible, David, I stated eventually. Certain alarms can't be unsound. What I do know is that I won't return to your residence. Not today. Not permanently. Mom, I require duration. I proceeded, raising a palm to halt his objection. Duration to absorb what transpired. Duration to discern what my existence appears like now, with or without your involvement. The seriousness of my statements suspended between us. Throughout his existence, I had never implied our bond was anything but enduring and absolute. You'd excise me from your existence, he whispered in horror. I didn't eject myself from my dwelling, I recalled to him. I didn't propose dispatching my parent to a center when I assumed I possessed millions. Those were your decisions, David. And decisions bear outcomes. He appeared to diminish visibly before me. What about the funds? He asked, then promptly blushed with embarrassment at the query. I responded gently. So we arrive at the core. That's not my intent, he retracted. I don't desire your funds, Mom. I vow. Good, I answered plainly. Because I have no plan to provide you any. His expression conveyed astonishment, not at the denial, but at my straightforwardness. The parent he recognized would have promptly proposed dividing her luck, would have placed his requirements foremost, as she invariably had. I should depart, he stated at last, rising. Christine's awaiting in the vehicle. She desired to ascend as well, but I thought it could be preferable if I conversed with you solo first. You thought accurately, I said. The notion of confronting Christine's false regrets and strategic sobs was beyond my capacity currently. Please inform your spouse I'm not prepared to converse with her. At the entrance, David rotated back, his demeanor adrift. What occurs now? I regarded my son, this individual I'd nurtured solo, had invested every fragment of affection and forfeit into, and sensed a peculiar blend of sorrow and freedom. Now, I said, I seize the existence I've deferred for others. I recommend you engage in profound contemplation on the individual you aspire to become with or without $60 million in the mix. After his exit, I rested in the silent in-chamber, gazing at the victorious slip that had concurrently demolished and emancipated my existence within a solitary dawn. Tomorrow, I would reach out to an attorney, a monetary consultant, determine how to secure such a vast amount. Tonight, I would permit myself to mourn, not for the wealth obtained, but for the deceptions forfeited. My device vibrated with a message from Elaine. Yearly health check prompt for you, Mom. Remember to arrange. My daughter, oblivious that her parents' reality had just collapsed and rebuilt in mere hours. I hadn't contacted her yet, unsure how to articulate what had occurred, what I had uncovered about the sibling she'd perpetually admired. Certain disclosures alter all. Certain facts can't be unacquired, and certain fortunes exact the steepest cost of all. 3 days elapsed in a haze of essential tasks and sentimental reverberations. I located a simple prolonged stay lodging with a cooking area, connected with a well-regarded lawyer focused on jackpot recipients, and scheduled a session with a fiscal expert experienced in managing abrupt prosperity. Throughout, My device kept erupting with communications from David and progressively from Christine. David's notes grew more frantic. Mom, please just converse with me. I recognize I don't merit your pardon, but please grant me an opportunity. Christine is distraught. We both are. We committed a grave error. Christine's notes progressed from weepy regrets to subtly masked bids at reconciliation that inevitably looped back to the wealth. Lorelei, I was enduring immense pressure. I voiced things I didn't intend. We're kin. Kin pardons. David and I always intended to divide any winnings with you. I trust you'll reciprocate. I replied to none, concentrating instead on the tangible measures of securing my fortune while preserving as much seclusion as the prize authority would permit. My lawyer, Miss Harrington, had been forthright. The positive aspect is you can secure via a trust to retain some privacy, she clarified in our initial session. The negative is that wealth alters connections irreversibly, frequently eliciting the worst in individuals. I've witnessed that directly, I answered, concisely detailing the circumstances with David and Christine. She inclined her head, unsurprised. Regrettably, that's typical. I firmly suggest altering your contact number right away and exercising extreme caution regarding whom you inform about your prize. It was on the fourth day, as I was endorsing the concluding documents to form the trust that would secure my prize, that my device rang with Elaine's digits. Mom. Her tone appeared strained. What on earth is occurring? David just phoned me sobbing, claiming, you've secured the jackpot and are severing ties with everyone. Christine contacted immediately after asserting you're experiencing some sort of collapse. Are you all right? I exhaled, settling onto the in-mattress border. I'm okay, Elaine. Superior to okay in some respects, inferior in others. It's intricate. Begin from the start, she directed, her medical tone assuming control. Serene, commanding, allowing no space for avoidance. So I did. I recounted the prize slips, Christine's volatile response when she assumed they'd triumphed, David's inability to protect me, the disclosure of the authentic winning slip. That utter Elaine exhaled when I concluded. And David. I can't fathom he merely lingered while she expelled you. What on earth befell my sibling? Wealth, I stated plainly. Or the allure of it anyhow. I'm heading home, she announced promptly. I'll reserve a flight this evening. You don't need to, I objected. You have sufferers who require you. My parent requires me, she rebutted resolutely. And evidently my sibling needs a firm rebuke. I'll arrive tomorrow. After disconnecting, I stared at the device, sensing concurrently eased and uneasy. Elaine had always been the family's fire starter, fervent, vocal, intensely shielding. Her response was unsurprising, but her involvement would unavoidably intensify a scenario I was still digesting. My reflection was disrupted by a tap at my in-chamber entrance. Cautious after recent events, I approached carefully and looked through the viewer. Christine stood in the passageway, grasping a massive floral arrangement, her features meticulously enhanced, but displaying the clear swelling of fresh tears. My initial urge was to overlook her, to feign absence. But a mix of intrigue and a lifelong habit of evading clashes prompted me to unlatch the entrance partially, retaining the safety latch. Lorelei, she exhaled, her words quivering with what I now identified as rehearsed sentiment. Thank heavens. I've been so concerned. How did you track me? I queried, mirroring the inquiry I'd posed to David days prior. I contacted every lodging in the metropolis, she stated, trying to force the Blooms through the partly ajar entrance. Please, can we converse? I am so remorseful about what transpired. I made no gesture to accept the Blooms or disengage the latch. Christine, I'm not prepared to converse with you yet. Please, she entreated, tears pooling in her gaze precisely on signal. What I did was atrocious. I don't comprehend what possessed me. It was as if I turned into someone else momentarily. It wasn't someone else, I stated softly. It was you minus the facade you've maintained for 3 years, and now I've glimpsed what's beneath. Her demeanor shifted briefly, a fleeting tightening before the repentant veneer resumed. People utter dreadful things they don't intend when they're thrilled or tense. You know I adore you like my own parent. The outright falsehood suspended between us. For 3 years, Christine had scarcely endured my existence, had issued innumerable subtle jabs about my attire, my cuisine, my antiquated views. She'd omitted me from excursions, neglected to prepare my spot at meals when David labored late, repositioned my possessions when I wasn't observing. Minor brutalities crafted to render me unwelcome without being blatant enough for David to detect. "Christine," I said, astonishing myself with my composure. "We both recognize that's untrue. You've harbored resentment toward my presence from the outset." "That's not it is," I interjected mildly. "And that would have been your prerogative if you'd been candid about it. But rather, you feigned while covertly sabotaging me at every opportunity. And when you believed you possessed the economic means to dispose of me without repercussions, you displayed your genuine sentiments quite dramatically." Her exterior fractured somewhat, annoyance seeping through. "So, you're penalizing us utilizing your fortunate slip to exact vengeance? Is that why you're present?" I questioned. "Because you believe I'm penalizing you by not distributing my prize?" She reddened. "Certainly not. I'm present because we're kin and can absolve one another. Can also don't expel each other onto the pavement," I highlighted. "Or label aging parents excess baggage." Christine's demeanor solidified completely now, the facade dissolving totally. "Look, we both know this concerns the funds. You struck the prize by sheer foolish chance, and now you're dangling it over our heads. That's unjust." "Existence seldom is." I concurred. As I learned when my son's wife bundled my items while declaring she was at last liberated from feigning desire for my company, her gaze constricted. "So that's it? You're going to penalize David too? Sever your own son due to something I executed. David made his own selections," I said. "And now I'm making mine." "You won't escape this," she snarled, her poised manner fully dissipated. "David merits half that funds. We merit it." "Merit is a perilous term, Christine," I answered, shutting the entrance softly but decisively in her face. Through the timber, I overheard her parting barb. "You'll rue this, Lorelei. No one rejects kin without repercussions." I rested against the sealed entrance, pulse racing despite my external serenity. The blooms she'd delivered lay strewn in the corridor where they dropped when I closed the door. Lovely, costly, and utterly empty, just like the bond she'd pretended to foster all these years. My device buzzed with a message from Elaine. "Flight reserved. Landing 11:30 tomorrow. We'll resolve this jointly. Love you, Mom." At least one of my offspring still grasped the significance of that term. Elaine landed like a whirlwind, marching through the terminal with the determined vigor that had driven her through medical training and into a role as one of the newest emergency surgeons at San Francisco General. She noticed me near luggage retrieval and headed straight my way, her portable bag trailing. "Mom," she said, enveloping me in a tight embrace that carried scents of aircraft sanitizer and her familiar jasmine scent. She withdrew, eyes assessing me expertly. "You appear drained. Are you resting?" "Greetings to you as well," I answered with a faint grin. "And yes, I'm resting. Somewhat it's been a hectic week." That's the understatement of the era. She linked her arm with mine as we proceeded to the exit. $60 million and familial treachery all in one dawn. You take the award for most theatrical life shift. Undoubtedly. That was Elaine, straightforward, occasionally harshly so, but never with spite. Where David had inherited his dad's mild demeanor and clash evasion, Elaine had seemingly absorbed all the boldness genes in the family reservoir. In the cab to my lodging, I updated her on the recent occurrences. Christine's appearance, the consultation with the fiscal expert, the trust being formed to claim the prize. "So, let me clarify this," Elaine said, her forehead creased. "Christine genuinely appeared at your in-chamber anticipating what precisely? That you'd surrender a portion of your prize after she physically expelled you from their dwelling." "I believe in her view she was offering amends," I answered. "She delivered blooms." Elaine scoffed. "Blooms for handling you like trash and labeling you excess baggage. How benevolent." "She's terrified." I said they both are. The actuality of what occurred, what they executed is penetrating, and they're rushing to reverse it because of the wealth," Elaine declared flatly. I exhaled, observing the known urban landscape glide by the cab pane. Not wholly. I believe David is truly appalled by his conduct, by what it disclosed about his personality. But yes, the wealth is a major element. $60 million tends to sharpen focuses. At the lodging, Elaine demanded ordering in-room meals instead of dining out. You require repose, not eatery turmoil, she proclaimed, her medical tone allowing no debate. As we consumed costly club wraps and divided a flask of average Pinot Grigio, she examined me with the same keen concentration she'd possessed since youth. You're altered, she eventually said. There's something, I don't know, more resilient about you. Having your son remain idle while his spouse bundles your items will affect that on a person, I answered wryly. No, it's beyond that. She inclined forward. You're not justifying them. The former you would have been contorting yourself attempting to perceive their perspective, faulting yourself for being a load. Her insight resonated. She was accurate. The Lorelei of a week prior would have been frantically hunting for methods to repair barriers, to ease tensions, to reinstate accord at any expense, including her own respect. I suppose I've depleted my justifications, I said quietly. When someone demonstrates who they are, accept it initially. Maya Angelou. Elaine nodded affirmatively. So what now? What do you desire, Mom? Not what's optimal for David. Not what's simplest for all else. What do you desire? The inquiry surprised me. What did I desire? For so long, my desires had been secondary. First to nurturing my kids solo after Frank passed, then to assisting David and Christine with their dwelling. Then to being the unintrusive, aiding mother-in-law who never grumbled about Christine's barely masked antagonism. I started, then paused, startled by the feeling rising in my throat. I desire to count. Not as David's parent or Frank's bereaved or anyone's anything, just as me. Elaine stretched across the surface and gripped my hand. Then that's our starting point. The following morning introduced another progression. David reached the lodging foyer, phoning up to seek approval to converse with us. Elaine wished to deny him flatly, but I sensed he merited at least one dialogue. I can manage this, I guaranteed her. And you'll be right beside me. When he reached our chamber, David appeared as if he'd matured 5 years in 5 days, unshaved, shadows beneath his eyes, clad in the same wrinkled Stanford top he'd resorted to during exam periods in university. Mom, he began, then spotted Elaine. His face showed shock, then fatigue. Elaine, what are you doing here? Supporting our parent after her son botched disastrously at that duty. She answered coolly, enter David. Express what you came to convey. He stepped in cautiously as if anticipating bodily clash. Given Elaine's demeanor, it wasn't an irrational apprehension. I initiated separation, he stated without introduction. From Christine. I'm residing at Mark's for now. This was unanticipated. Why? I questioned. Because I can't remain wedded to someone who would handle you that way, he answered. His words coarse with feeling. Because each time I view her, I recall how she bundled your items while uttering those awful things and how I just lingered. And the wealth has no relation to your choice. Elaine questioned doubtfully. David recoiled. I merit that. But no, this isn't about the prize. This is about who Christine truly is, who we both revealed ourselves to be in that instant. He gazed directly at me. I'll never absolve myself for disappointing you, Mom. Never. Absolution isn't the concern currently, I said meticulously. Trust is. You shattered something essential between us, David. Something that can't be mended with regrets or bold actions. I know, he whispered. I know that. I'm not requesting absolution or any of your funds. I just wanted you to know that I'm attempting to implement changes, genuine ones. Initiating separation is a beginning, Elaine recognized, her tone slightly less icy, but it doesn't reverse what transpired. Nothing can, he agreed. I miss my mom. I miss the individual I believed I was. Someone who would never permit anyone to harm you. The stark susceptibility in his demeanor pierced some of my protective shield. This was still my son, the young boy I'd reared solo, the teen who'd labored after classes to assist with expenses when funds were scarce, the youth who'd always phoned reliably every Sunday during university. It's going to require time, I said eventually. A lot of time. He nodded, accepting this without objection. I comprehend. I just wanted you to know about Christine and to express again how apologetic I am. He stood uneasily. I should depart. Allow you and Elaine your time together. After his departure, Elaine scrutinized my face meticulously. You're easing toward him. He's my son, I said plainly. That doesn't vanish because he committed a dreadful error. An error is misplacing your keys, Elaine countered. He observed his spouse expel you from your dwelling and proposed a senior residence instead of protecting you. I know what he executed, I answered quietly. I was present, recall? But I also nurtured him for 35 years. I know who he is beyond this one terrible instant. Elaine exhaled, some of her justified fury subsiding. I just don't want to witness you injured again, especially not by someone who should safeguard you above all. I'm not hastening into absolution, I assured her. But I'm leaving the entrance slightly ajar for the chance someday. That's all. Later that evening, as we planned our next measures, locating me a more lasting residence, arranging the formal prize claim, my device rang with an unfamiliar digit. Mrs. Thornton, a woman's voice inquired when I responded. This is Rebecca Wilson from Channel 9 News. We understand you're the recipient of last week's $60 million Powerball prize. We'd adore to arrange an interview. I disconnected promptly, pulse racing. How did they acquire my digit? How do they know it was me? Elaine's demeanor darkened. I can conceive of two possibilities, and both reside in the dwelling you were expelled from. The prize slip that had exposed Christine's authentic character was now endangering what little seclusion I retained. The fortune that should have delivered safety was introducing complexities I'd never envisioned. Wealth exposes people, indeed, sometimes in manners you never desired to witness. We must relocate you right away, Elaine proclaimed, already tossing my items into the bag I'd scarcely unpacked. Once your identity emerges, every journalist, remote kin, and fraudster in a 5-state area will be pursuing you. My device buzzed again. Another unfamiliar digit, then another. Within moments, my voicemail was saturated. My messages overflowing with queries from media sources, fiscal consultants proposing their assistance, and even several from individuals asserting to be distant relatives long absent. How did this occur? I questioned, observing helplessly as my seclusion dissolved instantly. The trust wasn't even completed yet. The prize authority shouldn't have disclosed my identity. They didn't, Elaine said ominously, browsing her own device. Look. She displayed her screen to reveal a regional news site's main page. There in bold titles, Regional Grandmother Secures $60 million Prize After Kin Dispute. Below was an image of me. One from David and Christine's nuptials 3 years prior. My face caught mid-chuckle as I fixed David's boutonniere. How did they obtain that photo? I murmured, a chill dread settling in my gut. That was on Christine's Instagram profile. Elaine's demeanor hardened as she scrolled deeper into the piece. Sources near the kin report that Lorelei Thornton, 67, acquired 2 prize slips as part of a kin custom, one for herself and one for her son and daughter-in-law. In a fate twist, both slips won with Thornton's slip claiming the $60 million prize, while her son's slip won a modest $500. She gazed up, eyes flaming. They're citing a source close to the kin. Mom, the disloyalty struck me like a bodily impact. Someone had vended my tale to the media. Someone who knew private details about the prize slips, about our kin custom. Christine, I said, the name acrid on my tongue. It must be. Or David, Elaine proposed, though she appeared reluctant to articulate the possibility. No, I shook my head decisively. Whatever his shortcomings, David wouldn't execute this. This bears Christine's mark entirely. My device rang again, this time with David's digit. I responded on speaker so Elaine could listen. Mom, his tone was frantic. Have you viewed the news? Someone conversed with the media about the prize. We viewed it, I answered curtly. Your spouse occupied earning extra by vending my tale. It wasn't Christine, he said promptly. At least I don't believe it was. She's been behaving oddly since I informed her about initiating separation, switching between pleading me to rethink and ranting about how unjust all is. But she appeared as stunned as I was when the tale emerged. Then who? Elaine demanded, leaning toward the device. Who else knew all these particulars? There was a pause. I might have discussed it with Mark when I first relocated to his place. I was quite disturbed that evening. Had a few excess beers and poured out the whole tale to your university pal who just happens to be wedded to a journalist at Channel 7. Elaine completed, her tone dripping with revulsion. Brilliant, David. Just brilliant. I didn't think he'd inform Jessica. They're experiencing issues. I thought our dialogue was confidential, man to man. Well, clearly it wasn't. I interjected, attempting to concentrate on practical issues rather than this fresh disloyalty. And now we must handle the repercussions. I need to exit this lodging before journalists start camping in the foyer. You can reside with me, David offered promptly. I'm at Mark's, but I could easily absolutely not. Elaine interrupted him. She's accompanying me to California tonight. The resoluteness in her tone allowed no debate, but I found myself wavering. Elaine, your apartment scarcely has space for you, let alone a visitor. And your routine at the medical center is adaptable for kin crises, she concluded firmly. I've already messaged my section leader. I've got 2 weeks of built-up leave time they've been urging me to use. You're heading to San Francisco until this subsides, and we can determine next measures. David's voice emerged through the speaker, small and vanquished. That's probably optimal. I'm so apologetic, Mom, for all. After we disconnected, Elaine continued packing with armed forces precision. I've reserved us on the overnight flight. We depart in 4 hours. I rested on the mattress edge, abruptly overwhelmed by the swift disintegration of my existence. In just 1 week, I'd transitioned from a comfortably unseen mother-in-law to a houseless prize recipient escaping media scrutiny, betrayed by my son and loathed by my daughter-in-law. Hey, Elaine's tone softened as she observed my demeanor. We'll resolve this. The media will shift to the next spectacle, and you'll be able to secure your prize through the trust with minimal exposure. This is just a transient tempest. Before I could reply, my device buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar digit. Hope you savor your tainted funds, you scheming old hag. You orchestrated this from the beginning, didn't you? Purchasing 2 slips knowing one would triumph. Now you've turned my spouse against me and ruined our union. I won't overlook this. See, I wordlessly passed the device to Elaine, whose eyes expanded as she read Christine's note. She's deranged, Elaine murmured. And potentially hazardous. We're definitely getting you out of town tonight. As we completed packing, my device kept exploding with alerts, more media queries, more fiscal consultants, more alleged distant kin, and among them, 5 more progressively deranged notes from Christine. Each more accusatory than the prior. She thinks I somehow engineered the prize win, I said incredulously, reading her latest outburst. As if I possess mystical abilities to choose winning digits. She's searching for someone to fault, Elaine noted, sealing my bag shut. In her distorted reality, she's the sufferer here, not the antagonist. And now that David's abandoned her, she's lost her main object for control. I never desired any of this, I said softly. The funds, the media scrutiny, David's union crumbling. I just desired to be handled with fundamental respect. Elaine halted in her efficient packing to sit beside me, taking my hand in hers. That's because you're a decent individual, Mom. Superior to all of us. Truthfully, you've devoted your entire existence to placing everyone else foremost. Maybe this prize win, as chaotic as it's turning, is the cosmos's method of compelling you to finally place yourself foremost. As we readied to depart for the airfield, a final text arrived. This one from David. Christine just exited the dwelling with a bag, ranting about rectifying things and revealing the truth to all. I don't know what she's scheming, but be cautious, Mom. She's not stable currently. A shiver coursed down my back. Christine had always been restrained, strategic in her hostility toward me. The notion of her becoming unpredictable, potentially aggressive, added a new layer of dread to an already overpowering scenario. Don't reply, Elaine counseled, reading over my shoulder. Let's just reach the airfield and leave this metropolis. We can address Christine's theatrics from 3,000 miles distant. In the cab to the airfield, I stared out at the metropolis illuminations, the horizon I'd called home for 40 years, since Frank and I acquired our initial modest dwelling as newlyweds. I'd never envisioned departing. Certainly not thus, escaping in the darkness from media scrutiny and a retaliatory daughter-in-law. My bond with my son dangling by a strand. $60 million. The amount that was supposed to deliver security and ease had instead unleashed disorder and exposed the fragile bases of relationships I'd thought were sturdy. Stop appearing so somber, Elaine prodded me lightly. This isn't a conclusion, Mom. It's a commencement. A strange, chaotic commencement, but still, for the first time in decades, you get to decide what your existence looks like on your conditions with your priorities. As the cab joined the roadway toward the airfield, I permitted myself to contemplate the possibility that she might be correct. That somewhere past the current upheaval might exist a life I'd never dared envision for myself. One where Lorelei Thornton existed as more than just someone's parent, someone's mother-in-law, someone's bereaved. One where I finally truly counted as myself. San Francisco welcomed us with mist and a soft drizzle that seemed to soften the harsh outlines of the world I'd abandoned. Elaine's apartment sat on a slope in no valley. Compact but with breathtaking vistas of the metropolis through tall windows. Contemporary, sparse, and clearly without children. A sharp difference from the family dwellings I'd inhabited my whole adult existence. It's not much, Elaine apologized, guiding me to her extra room, which served mainly as a workspace. But the couch extends, and no one will suspect to search for you here. It's ideal, I guaranteed her, too fatigued from the late flight and emotional chaos to concern about lodgings. Thank you for this. Cease thanking me, she said resolutely. You nurtured me solo after Dad passed. You held 2 jobs to fund my undergraduate. You backed me through medical training when I was too rest-deprived to recall my own name. I think I can manage offering a secure refuge for a few weeks. That initial day passed in a whirl of required calls. To Miss Harrington about advancing with the trust despite the media disclosure, to my financial institution about protecting my accounts from possible deceit, to the few intimate friends back home who might fret about my abrupt vanishing. I altered my contact digit, formed new electronic mail addresses, and initiated the process of vanishing digitally as completely as feasible. By dusk, fatigue overtook me, and I sank into dreamless slumber on Elaine's extendable couch, soothed by the unknown urban noises drifting through the slightly open pane. I awakened the next dawn to the aroma of brew and the sound of Elaine's voice, subdued and fervent, emanating from the kitchen. Padding softly down the corridor, I halted at the doorway, not wishing to disrupt what sounded like a grave dialogue. I don't care what she's claiming, David. Mom didn't pilfer anything from anyone. No, I'm not going to disclose where we are currently. Because your spouse is behaving like a madwoman, that's why. I entered the kitchen, announcing my presence. Elaine looked up, device pressed to her ear, and rolled her eyes theatrically. She's here now. Do you wish to speak with her? A pause. Fine, but keep it concise. She needs repose, not more turmoil. She passed me the device with a cautionary glance. David, I said, accepting both the device and the cup of brew. Elaine pushed across the counter to me. Mom, thank heavens. His tone sounded exhausted. Are you okay? Secure? I'm fine, I guaranteed him. What's transpiring there? He breathed out heavily. It's not positive. Christine's gone extreme. She conducted an interview with Channel 9 yesterday, asserting you manipulated the entire prize scenario to dismantle our union. Said you've been envious of her from the start and utilized the winning slip to insert a divide between us. That's ridiculous, I said. Though nothing about Christine's conduct surprised me anymore. Of course it is. But she's persuasive when she weeps on camera. She's depicting herself as the shattered young spouse deserted by her husband because his scheming parent won the prize. And people are accepting this. I questioned incredulously. Some are mostly individuals who don't know you. He paused. She's also submitted a legal demand against your prize winnings. The brew cup nearly escaped my grasp. She's what? Her attorney. And yes, she somehow located an attorney willing to handle this case. Is contending that since the custom of acquiring prize slips was a kin agreement, all winnings should be regarded as shared kin resources. It's entirely false according to Mark's acquaintance who practices kin law. But it could entangle things in court for a period. The space seemed to slant slightly. Just when I thought the scenario couldn't become more peculiar, Christine had discovered a way to heighten further. "Mom, are you still there?" "I'm here," I said weakly. "Just absorbing." "I'm so apologetic," David said, his tone breaking. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't informed Mark about the prize, if I'd confronted Christine when she was expelling you. If I interjected mildly, we can't alter what transpired, David. We can only address what exists." After concluding the call with assurances to remain connected securely through Elaine, I sank onto a kitchen seat, abruptly feeling every one of my 67 years. "Christine is litigating me for my prize winnings," I informed Elaine, who had been lingering nearby, pretending she wasn't listening. "And she conducted a broadcast interview depicting me as some kind of scheming beast." That vindictive little Elaine cut off the remainder of her statement. "Okay, deep inhalations. This alters nothing. Miss Harrington needs to know about the litigation promptly, but otherwise our strategy stays the same. You remain here away from attention while the legal group manages things back home." The next 2 weeks established an unanticipated pattern. While Elaine resumed her medical center duties, I uncovered a peculiar new liberty in being a stranger in an unfamiliar metropolis. No one recognized me as David's parent or Frank's bereaved. No one held expectations of me. No one required anything from me. I explored Elaine's area, discovering a tiny cafe where I could peruse for hours undisturbed. I toured galleries and bookshops. I strolled for miles along the shore, the crisp ocean breeze clarifying my mind in ways I hadn't felt in decades. In the evenings, Elaine and I prepared meals together or requested delivery, conversing more candidly than we had since her stormy adolescent years. I learned about her existence in San Francisco, her demanding but rewarding work in the emergency unit, her tight group of fellow physicians, her fluctuating relationship with a brain surgeon named Malik. "Why haven't you mentioned him previously?" I questioned one night over Thai cuisine. She shrugged, shifting noodles around her dish. "It's complex. We collaborate, which complicates matters, and I'm uncertain if I want the entire marriage-children bundle that seems to be the standard assumption." "You don't have to want that." I said there's no single correct way to construct a life. She gazed up surprised. "That's not what I anticipated you'd say. You've always been so conventional." "I've experienced some viewpoint shifts lately," I answered dryly. "Nothing like observing your daughter-in-law bundle your items while labeling you excess baggage to make you reevaluate societal norms." She chuckled, then grew solemn. "I've been contemplating what you said that first night here about desiring to count as yourself, not just as someone's parent or spouse. What does that appear like for you? What would make Lorelei Thornton content just for herself?" The inquiry surprised me, as it had the initial time she'd posed it. What did I desire? The idea felt alien after decades of placing others' needs foremost. "I'm not certain yet," I confessed, "but I'm beginning to catch glimpses. I relish this liberty to move as I please. I like acquiring new knowledge without fretting about managing a home. I've begun drawing again. Did I mention that? Just small scenes from my strolls. I haven't sketched anything since before your father passed." Elaine's demeanor softened. "That's wonderful, Mom. And yes, I noticed the drawing book. You're actually quite talented." "I'm out of practice," I demurred. "Accept the praise," she insisted. "And continue exploring. That's what this period is for. Figure out who Lorelei is beneath all the roles she's performed." That night, as I lay on the extendable couch, listening to the far-off sounds of the metropolis, I reflected on how oddly emancipating this enforced exile had become. The prize win that had overturned my existence had also paradoxically granted me the first genuine breathing room I'd had in 40 years. The funds would bring complications. Christine's litigation, media scrutiny, the inevitable demands and expectations from others. But for now, in this paused moment, I was uncovering something I'd forgotten existed myself. The call from Ms. Harrington arrived on a Tuesday morning, for weeks into my San Francisco haven. I was sketching the Golden Gate Bridge from a vantage in the Presidio, the mist rolling dramatically through its enormous spans, when my new secure device buzzed. "Mrs. Thornton," she started without introduction. "I have updates on multiple fronts. First, the positive news. The trust has been formed and approved by the prize authority. Your winnings have been moved to the protected accounts we established. I breathed out slowly, sensing a burden lift that I hadn't fully recognized was there. And the other matter? That's more intricate, she answered, her tone balanced. Your daughter-in-law's litigation has been submitted with the county tribunal. As anticipated, it's groundless, but we'll need to reply formally. Additionally, her media effort has intensified. How so? I questioned, already dreading the response. She's given 3 more interviews, each more provocative than the previous. The newest one includes accusations that you've had a pattern of scheming conduct and monetary dominance over your son. I nearly dropped the device. That's ridiculous. I provided them funds for their dwelling initial payment. I know, Ms. Harrington said reassuringly. And we have the records to verify it. But in scenarios like this, sentimental stories can sometimes overpower factual proof, at least in public perception. What does this mean for the litigation? Legally, it changes nothing. Her case remains feeble, but she's clearly trying to pressure you through public compassion and potential torment. Have you received any worrisome communications? I thought of the dozens of notes that had inundated my old email and device before I changed them. Strangers labeling me a covetous old lady who was demolishing a young pair's union. Distant acquaintances abruptly expressing worry about my mental well-being. Even a few former neighbors suggesting I should do the right thing and divide my winnings. Some I admitted. But I've disconnected from most platforms where people could reach me. Good. Maintain that. She paused. There's one more item. Your son contacted our office yesterday. He wanted to formally declare for the record that he is not part of his wife's litigation and does not endorse her claims. A small warmth ignited in my chest at this proof that David was, at least in this issue, choosing the correct side. Thank you for informing me that. After the call concluded, I sat on the park seat, my sketching overlooked as I processed this new progression. Christine was intensifying, heightening her grudge against me through both judicial and public avenues. What had begun as a shock response to perceived loss was solidifying into something more perilous, a deliberate drive to demolish my reputation and claim funds she felt entitled to. That evening, I shared the update with Elaine over supper. We should counter-litigate for slander, she declared promptly, piercing her fork into her fish with unnecessary vigor. She's publicly fabricating about you. That's pursuable. More litigations mean more exposure, I pointed out. I just want this to diminish so I can advance. It won't diminish if she keeps fueling the flames, Elaine argued. Have you seen the newest? She retrieved her tablet and navigated to a regional news site from back home. She's got a hashtag now, Justice for Christine. It's gaining traction in your hometown. The image on the display showed Christine, tearful but attractive in a simple blue garment, being interviewed in what seemed a park near David's dwelling. The title read, Prize Conflict Rips Family Asunder. She took all from me, says shattered daughter-in-law. This is unreal, I murmured, scanning the piece. According to Christine's latest account of events, I had methodically separated David from her, critiqued her constantly, and used economic influence to control their lives before finally employing the prize ploy to demolish their union. It's character destruction, Elaine corrected ominously. And it's succeeding. Look at the responses. I scrolled down, my heart sinking as I read response after response sympathizing with the poor young spouse and condemning the greedy mother-in-law who wouldn't divide her fortune. These individuals don't know me, I said, pushing the tablet away. They don't know what really transpired, exactly why you need to convey your side, Elaine insisted. Not necessarily through the media, but at least through judicial channels. Otherwise, her story becomes the sole one people perceive. I considered this, remembering how David had stood silently by while Christine packed my items, how he'd suggested a luxury senior community when he thought they were millionaires. The memory still stung, but it had lost some of its acute edges over the weeks of distance and reflection. I'll contemplate it, I promised, but right now I need some air. I stepped onto Elaine's small balcony, gazing at the metropolis lights sparkling below. San Francisco had become an unanticipated sanctuary, a place where I could breathe, think, rediscover parts of myself long inactive. The thought of being pulled back into a public conflict with Christine, of having my character analyzed by strangers, felt like a violation of this newfound tranquility. My device buzzed with a text from David. Just viewed Christine's newest interview. I'm so apologetic, Mom. I've told her to cease, but she won't heed me anymore. I've spoken to the kin attorney about accelerating the divorce. Divorce. The word weighed heavily in my mind. Whatever Christine's flaws, whatever pain she'd inflicted, I had never intended or wanted to dismantle my son's marriage. Yet, here we were, their 3-year bond disintegrating in the wake of a prize slip that had revealed the fissures already present in their foundation. I texted back, I'm sorry it's reached this. Are you okay? His reply came swiftly. Not really, but I'm starting to perceive things more clearly about Christine, about myself, about what kind of man I want to be. A lump formed in my throat. Despite all, he was still my son, the infant I'd nursed through discomfort, the boy whose fractured limb I'd held in the emergency room, the teenager whose heart I'd helped repair after his first separation. I was still pondering how to respond when another text arrived. This one from an unfamiliar digit. You think you're secure hiding in San Francisco? Everyone has a cost, Lorelei. Even your treasured daughter's coworkers. Savor your alone time. See, the device nearly slipped from my suddenly numb fingers. How did Christine know where I was? We'd been so cautious. Only David knew I was staying with Elaine, and even he didn't have my new contact details or precise location. With trembling hands, I forwarded the message to Elaine, who was still inside. Seconds later, she burst onto the balcony, her face ashen. She knows you're here, she said unnecessarily, staring at the message on my device. How the hell does she know you're here? Someone must have informed her, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady despite the fear unfolding in my stomach. But who? You, me, David? We're the only ones who know. Elaine's expression darkened. Not anymore, apparently. She took my arm, guiding me back inside and securing the balcony door behind us. Pack your things. We're not remaining here tonight. Elaine, we can't just Mom. She interrupted, her tone gravely serious. Christine has always been unstable, but now she's tracking you across the nation and sending menacing messages. We're not risking your safety. As I mechanically began collecting my items, I wondered how it had come to this. Fleeing in the night from a woman who had once smiled beside me in family photos, who had exchanged vows with my son in a blossom-filled garden ceremony, where I had dabbed tears of delight. The prize slip hadn't just revealed who Christine was. It had altered her, or perhaps released something that had been carefully confined beneath her refined surface, something hazardous. And now that alteration was forcing another shift, pushing me out of yet another temporary haven, another place I'd begun to consider home. Elaine drove us to Malik's residence in Pacific Heights, a stylish, contemporary tower with a porter and protection setup that she deemed sufficient for our sudden move. The brain surgeon, to his merit, posed no questions when we arrived past midnight with hastily bundled bags, simply directed us to his guest chamber and prepared the couch for himself. He's a keeper, I whispered to Elaine as he discreetly departed to let us settle. Let's concentrate on the death threats from your daughter-in-law before we dissect my romantic life, she replied wryly, though I caught the small smile she tried to hide. The next morning brought a flurry of action. Elaine phoned the medical center, vaguely citing a kin crisis to explain her absence. I contacted Ms. Harrington to report Christine's menacing message, which she immediately advised recording for potential protective order actions. Malik, before departing for his duty, demonstrated how to operate his elaborate home protection system and promised to notify the building's administration about our situation. How did she locate us? I pondered aloud, pacing the length of Malik's spotless living area. David wouldn't have informed her. Maybe not deliberately, Elaine replied, her fingers racing over her laptop keys as she searched for something. But if she had access to his device, his email, she trailed off, then sat straighter. Or his credit card records. What do you mean? David's been contacting you through that secure messaging program I established, right? The one that requires a membership. She turned the laptop toward me, displaying a credit card record with a highlighted V. If they still have shared accounts, she could have viewed this fee, researched what the firm does, and deduced he was using it to communicate securely with someone. But that doesn't explain how she knew I was in San Francisco, I highlighted. Elaine grimaced, no, but this might. She pulled up David's social media page, something I rarely checked, and pointed to a photo posted 3 weeks earlier. It showed David at what appeared to be his workplace holding a coffee cup that read, "World's Best Brother." With the Golden Gate Bridge in the backdrop, the description read, "Missing kin today. Some bridges can't be burned. Only crossed when you're ready." He was sending me a signal, I realized, informing me he was considering me, that he grasped I needed distance, and inadvertently informing Christine exactly where you might be, Elaine concluded ominously. If she knows I reside in San Francisco, it wouldn't require a genius to link the points. My device buzzed with a text from Ms. Harrington. Need to converse urgently. Can you talk now? The call that followed brought news that sent my already unsettled world tilting further off balance. Christine has submitted an urgent motion with the tribunal, Miss Harrington explained, her normally composed tone tight with controlled ire. She's asserting that you're mentally unstable and unfit to handle the prize winnings, citing your sudden vanishing and erratic conduct as proof. That's absurd, I sputtered. I'm perfectly sound of mind. Of course you are, she agreed. But she's presenting your exit from town as evidence of paranoid thinking, claiming you've severed contact with kin and friends due to delusions about people pursuing your funds. I laughed incredulously. She literally sent me a menacing text last night after somehow tracking me to San Francisco. That's not paranoia. That's a reasonable security worry. I know. And we'll present that proof to the tribunal. But here's where things get complicated. She's convinced a judge to grant a temporary hearing on the matter next week. You'll need to appear in person to contest her claims. The implications hit me like a physical strike. I would have to return home, confront Christine directly, submit to questioning about my mental competence in open tribunal. This is a postponement tactic, Ms. Harrington continued. Her litigation over the prize winnings is weak, so she's attempting another approach. If she can get even a temporary ruling questioning your competence, it could freeze the assets and give her influence for a settlement. After the call ended, I sat in stunned quiet, trying to process this latest development. Elaine, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, was incandescent with rage. She's trying to have you declared incompetent after everything she's done. That manipulative gaslighting, Elaine, I interrupted gently. This isn't helping. She took a deep breath, visibly attempting to calm herself. You're right. I'm sorry. I just can't believe she's escalating to this level. I said quietly. She's desperate. The divorce is advancing. Her public sympathy campaign isn't translating to legal advantage, and she's running out of options. So, what now? You're not actually considering going back there, are you? I sighed, feeling the weight of inevitability settling over me. I don't think I have a choice. If I don't appear at this hearing, it only strengthens her claim that I'm behaving erratically. Then, I'm accompanying you, Elaine declared, her tone allowing no argument. I'll testify about your mental state if necessary. As a physician, my assessment would carry weight. The journey back felt like traveling toward a storm I could see brewing on the horizon. Dark, ominous, unavoidable. We flew under assumed names, booked into a hotel across town from my old neighborhood, and arranged for a private security detail recommended by Ms. Harrington. David met us at the hotel the evening before the hearing, his face drawn with stress and shame. I'm so sorry, he said immediately. I never imagined she'd go this far. The things she's saying about you, the lies, it's unbelievable. Believe it, Elaine said sharply. Your wife is trying to have our mother declared mentally incompetent to get her hands on money that isn't hers. David flinched at her tone, but didn't argue. The divorce papers have been filed. My lawyer is pushing for an expedited process based on Christine's increasingly erratic behavior. Has she threatened you too? I asked, studying his face with concern. He hesitated. Not physically, but she's threatened to destroy me if I testify on your behalf tomorrow. Said she'd tell everyone I was abusive, that I controlled her financially, isolated her from her friends. Would anyone believe that? Elaine asked skeptically. Some might, he admitted. I was never any of those things, but Christine has always been good at presenting herself as sympathetic. And she's convincing when she cries. I reached across the table to take his hand. You don't have to testify, David. Ms. Harrington thinks we have a strong case without putting you in that position. He shook his head firmly. No, Mom. I've already failed you once. I won't do it again. I'll be there tomorrow, telling the truth about what happened. After he left, Elaine and I ordered room service and reviewed our strategy for the hearing one final time. Are you nervous? She asked as we prepared for bed. Terrified, I admitted. Not of Christine or the hearing itself, but of being pulled back into all this ugliness. Just when I was starting to find some peace, Elaine sat beside me on the edge of the bed. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that this is temporary. Christine can delay things. She can make noise. She can even force you back to town for a hearing. But she can't take away who you are or what you've discovered about yourself these past weeks. I hugged my daughter, grateful beyond words for her fierce support. One way or another, I said, tomorrow, this particular chapter ends. I lay awake long after Elaine had fallen asleep, watching shadows play across the unfamiliar hotel ceiling. Tomorrow, I would face Christine, the woman who had called me excess baggage, who had packed my items while telling me I was unwanted, who was now attempting to have me declared incompetent to manage my own affairs. Strangely, beneath the anxiety and indignation, I found a core of calm resolve that hadn't been there 6 weeks ago when I'd fled town. The Lorelei who had left had been shocked, hurt, and unmoored by betrayal. The Lorelei returning tomorrow had begun to rediscover her strength, her voice, her worth beyond what she could give to others. Christine had forced this confrontation, but she would not find the same woman she had thrown out of her home that fateful morning. For better or worse, that woman no longer existed. The county courthouse loomed before us, its stone front stern against the clear morning sky. Elaine and I arrived an hour early on Ms. Harrington's advice, slipping in through a side entrance to avoid the small cluster of reporters gathered on the main steps. Vultures, Elaine muttered as we were escorted to a private waiting room. How did they even know about this hearing? Court schedules are public record, Ms. Harrington replied, joining us with a sleek leather portfolio tucked under her arm. And unfortunately, Christine has been quite effective at generating media interest in your case. I smoothed my navy suit purchased just yesterday at a boutique near our hotel, chosen specifically for its conservative cut and dignified appearance. Image shouldn't matter in a legal proceeding, but we all knew it did. What should I expect? I asked, my mouth dry, despite the water I'd been sipping steadily all morning. Judge Montgomery is fair but direct, Miss Harrington explained. She doesn't tolerate theatrics or obvious manipulation. Christine's attorney will present their case first, likely focusing on your sudden disappearance and erratic behavior. They'll try to paint you as paranoid and unstable. And our response: we present you as you are a rational woman who temporarily relocated after experiencing genuine harassment following a lottery win. We have the threatening text messages, documentation of the media frenzy that followed the leak, and of course Elaine's testimony as both your daughter and a medical professional regarding your mental state. The door opened and David slipped in, looking uncomfortable in a suit that hung slightly loose on his frame. He'd lost weight in the weeks since I'd left town. They're here, he said without preamble. Christine and her lawyer just arrived. He hesitated. She's giving some kind of statement to the reporters outside. Ms. Harrington's expression tightened. As expected, she's playing to the court of public opinion. We'll focus on the actual court. At precisely 10 a.m., we were led into the courtroom. It was smaller than I'd imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. Christine sat at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a demure gray dress, with her hair pulled back in a simple knot, the picture of a concerned, wronged young woman. When she saw me, her expression flickered briefly, surprised perhaps that I had actually returned to face her before settling back into practiced solemnity. Beside her sat a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, who I assumed was her attorney. The proceedings began with the judge reviewing the petition. Christine's attorney, Mr. Delaney, rose to present their case. Your Honor, This is a deeply troubling situation involving an elderly woman who has experienced a significant psychological break following a large lottery win, he began, his voice oozing concern. Mrs. Thornton, who previously displayed no signs of financial acumen, suddenly disappeared after winning $60 million, cutting off contact with family and behaving in increasingly paranoid ways. I felt Elaine stiffen beside me at the word elderly. But Miss Harrington placed a calming hand on her arm. The petitioner, Mrs. Christine Thornton, is simply concerned for her mother-in-law's well-being and the proper management of these substantial funds. We believe temporary conservatorship is appropriate while Mrs. Thornton undergoes proper psychological evaluation. As he spoke, Christine dabbed at her eyes with a tissue the perfect image of distress. I wondered abstractly how many times she had practiced that gesture in front of a mirror. When it was our turn, Miss Harrington approached the bench with composed confidence. Your Honor, the claims before you today represent not concern for Mrs. Lorelei Thornton's well-being, but rather a calculated attempt to gain control over lottery winnings that rightfully belong to her alone, she stated firmly. Far from experiencing a psychological break, Mrs. Thornton made perfectly rational decisions to protect herself after being subjected to threatening behavior from the petitioner herself. She presented the text messages Christine had sent, including the threatening one that had driven us from Elaine's apartment. She detailed the media frenzy that had erupted after someone close to the family leaked private information about the lottery win. And most devastatingly, she called David to testify about what had really happened the morning after the lottery numbers were announced. David approached the witness stand visibly nervous but determined. Under Ms. Harrington's gentle questioning, he recounted that terrible morning, Christine's elation at thinking they'd won, her vicious verbal attack when she believed they no longer needed me, the packing of my belongings, the suggestion of a senior living facility. And was your mother displaying any signs of mental instability during this event? Ms. Harrington asked. No, David replied firmly. She was understandably hurt and shocked, but completely lucid, much more composed than I would have been in her position. When Christine's lawyer cross-examined him, attempting to suggest he was testifying under duress or out of guilt, David remained steady. I'm here because it's the truth, he said simply. I failed my mother once by not defending her when she needed me. I won't fail her again by staying silent while false accusations are made against her. Elaine's testimony followed, providing both personal observation and professional medical opinion about my mental competence. Finally, it was my turn to take the stand. As I was sworn in, I looked directly at Christine for the first time. Behind her practiced expression of concern, I glimpsed something else. A cold calculation, a simmering anger that no amount of demure clothing or carefully applied makeup could fully conceal. Ms. Harrington's questions were straightforward, allowing me to explain in my own words why I had temporarily relocated, how I had maintained contact with my son throughout, and the steps I had taken to responsibly manage my lottery winnings through proper legal and financial channels. Then it was Mr. Delaney's turn. He approached with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to intimidating witnesses, particularly, I suspected, older women. Mrs. Thornton, he began. Would you say it's normal behavior for a woman of your age to suddenly abandon her home and family after coming into money? I didn't abandon anyone, I replied calmly. I removed myself from a hostile environment after being literally thrown out of my son's home by his wife, the same woman who is now claiming concern for my well-being. He frowned slightly at my composed response. Yet you fled across the country without telling anyone where you were going. Doesn't that suggest paranoid thinking? No, it suggests prudent caution. When someone packs your belongings while calling you dead weight, then tracks you to another city and sends threatening messages, maintaining privacy seems quite rational. As the questioning continued, I remained steady, neither rising to his provocations nor allowing him to twist my words. The weeks in San Francisco had given me something precious, perspective, and the quiet confidence that comes from rediscovering one's own worth. When Mr. Delaney finally ran out of angles to pursue, the judge called a brief recess before issuing her ruling. In the hallway outside, Ms. Harrington squeezed my hand. You were excellent, she said. Clear, composed, rational. Exactly what we needed to demonstrate. She's going to lose, isn't she? David asked, glancing toward the conference room where Christine and her attorney had sequestered themselves. Most likely, Ms. Harrington confirmed. Judge Montgomery doesn't suffer fools or obvious manipulation. I expect she'll not only dismiss the petition, but possibly issue a warning about frivolous filings. When court resumed 30 minutes later, Judge Montgomery's expression was stern as she delivered her ruling. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented, this court finds no basis whatsoever for the petition for conservatorship. Mrs. Lorelei Thornton has demonstrated clear mental competence and rational decision-making throughout these proceedings and in her actions following her lottery win. Christine's face hardened as the judge continued. Furthermore, this court is troubled by what appears to be a pattern of harassment directed at Mrs. Thornton, followed by legal maneuvers seemingly designed to gain control over her financial assets. The petitioner is advised that any further filings of this nature may result in sanctions. As we exited the courtroom, I felt a curious lightness, not triumph or vindication, but simply relief that this particular battle was over. In the corridor, Christine stood alone, her attorney already departing with a brief curt comment about exploring other options. Our eyes met across the polished floor. For a moment, her mask slipped completely, revealing the raw fury beneath. Then she turned on her heel and strode away, the sharp click of her heels echoing off the marble walls like distant gunfire. "It's over," David said, watching her go. But something in her rigid posture, in the calculated glance she'd thrown over her shoulder as she disappeared around the corner, told me it wasn't. Not quite yet. The victory in court provided a foundation but not a conclusion. In the days that followed, I remained in town at the hotel working with Ms. Harrington to finalize the trust arrangements and address the remaining legal entanglements Christine had created. The good news, Ms. Harrington reported during our meeting 3 days after the hearing, is that her main lawsuit over the lottery winnings is losing momentum. After Judge Montgomery's ruling and comments, Christine's attorney has proposed settlement discussions. What kind of settlement? I asked wearily. A nuisance settlement. Essentially, a small payment to make her go away. She adjusted her glasses. I don't recommend it. Giving her anything could be interpreted as legitimizing her claims. I agree, I said firmly. No settlements. David, who had been attending these meetings with my permission, nodded in agreement. She doesn't deserve a penny. His divorce proceedings were advancing, though not without complications. Christine had contested everything possible, from the division of assets to ownership of items David had owned before their marriage. Her latest demand that she receive the house I had helped them purchase seemed designed more to hurt than to secure actual benefit. She knows how much that house means to both of us, David explained over dinner that evening with Elaine and me. It's not about the property value. It's about taking something she knows matters. Let her have it, I suggested, surprising both of them. Some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when they're over symbols rather than substance. David looked uncertain. But Mom, you sold your home to help with the down payment. Your home where we grew up. Exactly, I said gently. It was just a house, David. The memories, the meaning, those go with us. Christine can have the building. She can't take what it represents. Later that night, as Elaine and I prepared for bed in our shared hotel room, she studied me with the thoughtful expression that meant she was analyzing something. You're different, she finally said. Not just since the lottery, but since San Francisco, more, I don't know, centered somehow. I considered this as I applied moisturizer to my face, a small luxury ritual I'd adopted recently. I think I found parts of myself I'd forgotten existed or maybe never knew were there. Like what? Like the woman who can walk alone through a strange city without fear. The woman who can stand up in court and speak her truth without apologizing. The woman who can set boundaries without feeling guilty. I met her eyes in the mirror. The woman who exists outside of what she gives to others. Elaine smiled, a hint of pride in her expression. I like her. She should stick around. The next morning brought an unexpected development. As I sipped coffee in the hotel restaurant, mentally planning the day ahead, My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Christine's gone." "What do you mean gone?" I asked when he arrived at the hotel 20 minutes later, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. "Just gone." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I went by the house to pick up some documents my lawyer needed, and it was empty. Half the furniture missing, her clothes gone, even pictures removed from the walls. The neighbors said they saw a moving truck yesterday while I was at work." Miss Harrington, whom I called immediately, was less surprised. Not uncommon when someone realizes they've overplayed their hand legally. "She's cutting her losses. Should we be concerned?" I asked about her coming back or trying something else. "I think she's done," Miss Harrington said confidently. "The court's rebuke was quite public. And her remaining lawsuit is weak." Sometimes people like Christine, when faced with actual consequences for their actions, simply move on to easier targets. By the end of the week, we had confirmation. Christine had relocated to Arizona near her parents' retirement community. Her attorney filed for withdrawal from the lottery lawsuit, effectively ending the legal threat. "So that's it?" Elaine asked, as we celebrated with a quiet dinner at a restaurant far from the media's lingering attention. "She just gives up and disappears." "People like Christine don't change their nature," I replied, thinking of the calculating look I'd seen in her eyes that day in court. "But they do recalculate when the odds shift against them. She'll find another path, another target. I'm just grateful it's no longer us." With the immediate threat resolved, the question of what came next hung unspoken between us. Elaine needed to return to her patients in San Francisco. David was rebuilding his life in the aftermath of his collapsing marriage, and I was untethered in a way both terrifying and exhilarating. "Have you thought about what you want to do?" David asked hesitantly over dessert. "Now that everything's settling down. You could stay here, of course. I could help you find a new place." "Actually," I interrupted gently, "I've been thinking about that, and I don't think I'm going to settle here again." Both of my children stared at me with identical expressions of surprise. "But this is your home," David protested. "Your friends are here." "Your whole life was here," I corrected. "But I'm not the same person who left 6 weeks ago, David." That Lorelei was defined by her roles: mother, mother-in-law, community volunteer. This Lorelei is still discovering who she is. "So where will you go?" Elaine asked, her expression shifting from surprise to thoughtful consideration. "I'm not entirely sure yet. I thought I might travel for a while, see some of the places I've always dreamed about. Paris in the spring, the Italian countryside in summer, maybe spend some time near you in San Francisco, and sometime here when David needs me." "When I need you," David echoed, his voice catching. "Mom, after everything that happened, how I failed you. I wouldn't blame you if you never wanted to see me again." I reached across the table to take his hand. "You made a mistake, David. A painful, hurtful mistake, but in the aftermath, you've shown real remorse and growth. I'm proud of how you've handled yourself these past weeks." His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," I told him. "It's about choosing to move forward unburdened by anger that only hurts the person carrying it. I forgive you not because you earned it, but because I don't want that weight in my heart anymore." The weeks that followed brought rapid changes. With Ms. Harrington's help, I established a foundation that would support causes close to my heart. Educational opportunities for single parents, housing security for vulnerable seniors, arts programs in underserved communities. I purchased a modest but beautiful condo in San Francisco's North Beach neighborhood, a home base between travels and conveniently close to Elaine. David flew out to help me settle in, spending a week assembling furniture, hanging artwork, and rebuilding our relationship conversation by conversation. On his last evening before flying home, we sat on my new balcony overlooking the bay, sharing a bottle of wine as the sun set. "Are you happy, Mom?" he asked suddenly. I considered the question carefully, watching the fading light gild the water in shades of gold and amber. "I'm becoming happy," I said finally. "I'm learning what that means for me on my own terms." "I'm glad," he said softly. "You deserve it. You always have." As he left the next morning, I handed him an envelope, not unlike the one I'd given him that fateful day when everything changed. "What's this?" he asked, hesitating to open it. Just a small gift, I said. For when you're ready. Inside was information about an educational trust I'd established for his future children, should he choose to have them. And a letter expressing my hope for his future, my faith in the man he was becoming, and my unconditional but clear-eyed love. 3 months after winning the lottery that had both shattered and reconstituted my life, I boarded a plane to Paris, my first stop on a journey with no fixed end point. As the aircraft lifted into the clouds, I thought about the strange alchemy that had transformed a devastating betrayal into a catalyst for liberation. The lottery hadn't really changed me. It had simply revealed what was already there. Christine's latent cruelty, David's moral weaknesses, my own long-suppressed strength and capacity for self-determination. Money reveals people, I had told David weeks ago. But it wasn't just about revealing others. It was about revealing ourselves, our values, our boundaries, our capacity for growth and change. Christine had revealed her true nature when she thought she had one. David had revealed his weaknesses, but also his capacity for growth and accountability in the aftermath. And I had revealed, perhaps most surprisingly to myself, that beneath decades of self-effacement and accommodation lay a woman of remarkable resilience and untapped potential. $60 million hadn't bought my happiness, but it had purchased the freedom to discover it on my own terms. A journey worth far more than the winning ticket that had started all 5 years can change everything or nothing at all. In my case, it was somewhere in between. Paris led to Rome, which led to a small village in Tuscany, where I rented a stone cottage for 3 months and rediscovered my love of painting. Florence in autumn gave way to Barcelona in winter. Then a springtime sojourn along the coast of Portugal. I filled sketchbooks with watercolors, journals with observations, and my once cautious heart with experiences I'd deferred for decades. I wasn't running from my past, but rather running toward a future I'd never dared imagine. One where Lorelei Thornton existed primarily for herself, her own joys and discoveries, rather than in relation to others' needs. The irony wasn't lost on me that it had taken Christine's cruelty to catalyze this transformation. Sometimes our greatest gifts come wrapped in our most painful experiences. On this particular morning, exactly 5 years since that fateful lottery drawing, I sat on the terrace of my San Francisco condo, watching fog roll through the Golden Gate Bridge while waiting for my guests to arrive. At 72, I'd settled into a rhythm that suited me. 6 months of travel each year, interspersed with time in my 2 permanent homes. This light-filled space near Elaine, and a smaller apartment back in my hometown where I could be close to David when I chose to be. The doorbell rang precisely at 11. Elaine, punctual as always. "Happy lottery," she called out as I opened the door, presenting me with a small blue gift bag. Behind her stood Malik, now her husband of 3 years, carrying a bottle of champagne. "Is that what we're calling it now?" I laughed, accepting both the gift and her warm embrace. 5 years since Mom's great awakening deserves a name, she insisted, following me into the living room. "We're celebrating your rebirth, not just a winning ticket." The gift bag contained a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a butterfly, a fitting symbol for the metamorphosis I'd undergone. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. "The champagne is technically from both of us," Malik added with a wink. "But the sentiment is all Elaine." We were arranging glasses on the coffee table when the doorbell rang again. This time it was David, accompanied by his fiancée, Rachel. A kind, straightforward librarian he'd met 2 years after his divorce was finalized. "Sorry we're late," Rachel apologized, handing me a bouquet of peonies, my favorite. "Someone insisted on stopping for those bagels you like from that place on Baker Street." "Worth it," David declared, holding up a paper bag that indeed emitted the unmistakable scent of my favorite sesame bagels. "Happy anniversary, Mom." As we settled around the living room with champagne and bagels, I studied my small family circle with quiet contentment. Elaine had mellowed slightly with marriage, though she remained fiercely protective and brutally honest when necessary. Malik complemented her intensity with his steady calm, their partnership a balance of passion and peace. David had undergone the most profound transformation. The painful crucible of Christine's betrayal and the dissolution of their marriage had forced him to confront his own weaknesses. His conflict avoidance, his susceptibility to manipulation, his occasional moral cowardice. The man who sat beside Rachel now was more grounded, more principled, with a quiet strength that reminded me of his father in our best years together. "Any news from the Christine front?" Elaine asked, never one to shy away from difficult topics. David shook his head. "Nothing in over a year. Last I heard, she'd remarried. Some real estate developer in Scottsdale. Poor guy probably has no idea what he's in for. Or maybe he's cut from the same cloth," Rachel suggested. "Some people find exactly the partners they deserve." The conversation drifted to happier topics. Elaine's recent promotion to department head, David and Rachel's upcoming wedding, my plans for a summer in Greece. The bitter events that had initially fractured our family had ultimately strangely strengthened the bonds between those of us who remained. "I have news," I announced as we finished our champagne. "I've decided what to do with the foundation." The Thornton Foundation, established with a significant portion of my lottery winnings, had been funding various causes close to my heart for 5 years. Recently, I'd been considering a more focused direction for its future. "I'm creating a special initiative for senior women facing housing insecurity or financial exploitation," I explained, particularly those who find themselves vulnerable after decades of prioritizing family over financial independence. "That's perfect," Elaine said warmly. "Helping others avoid the situation you nearly found yourself in. Or helping them find their way out if they're already there," David added, "giving them the support system you built for yourself." After everyone left, I took my afternoon walk along the waterfront, reflecting on the strange journey that had brought me here. 5 years ago today, I checked lottery numbers in the middle of the night, discovering a win that would change everything, though not in any way I could have anticipated. I remembered sitting alone in that hotel room after being thrown out of David's house. The raw pain of betrayal still fresh, wondering what would become of me. If I could have glimpsed this future then, the adventures I'd have, the confidence I'd develop, the peaceful self-possession I'd cultivate, I might not have believed it possible. Near Fisherman's Wharf, I passed an older woman sitting alone on a bench, staring out at the bay with an expression of such lost desolation that it stopped me in my tracks. Something in her posture, the slight curve of defeated shoulders, the hands clasped too tightly in her lap, reminded me viscerally of myself from 5 years ago. I sat beside her, offering a simple greeting. She startled slightly, as if unaccustomed to being noticed. "Beautiful view," I commented, giving her space to respond or not. "I suppose," she replied after a moment. "I'm not really seeing it today." We sat in companionable silence for a while before she volunteered. "My husband left last week after 42 years for his yoga instructor." She gave a hollow laugh. "Cliché, isn't it? I should have seen it coming." "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it deeply. "That kind of betrayal is devastating." She looked at me then. Really looked. Perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit. "Everyone keeps saying I'll be fine, that it's a chance for a fresh start, but I'm 64. Who starts fresh at 64? I smiled, not with condescension, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. "I did." At 67, her eyebrows rose in surprise. "Really? Really?" I confirmed, and it was terrifying and painful and eventually the most liberating thing that ever happened to me. We talked for nearly an hour. I didn't tell her about the lottery. That wasn't the important part of my story anyway. I told her about rediscovering my passion for art, about traveling solo through countries I'd only dreamed of visiting, about learning that it's never too late to define yourself on your own terms. Before we parted, I gave her my card with the foundation's information. "When you're ready," I said, "we have resources that might help. Financial counseling, housing assistance, legal advice, and just people who understand what you're going through." "Thank you," she said, tucking the card carefully into her purse. "For everything." As I continued my walk home, I thought about the perfect symmetry of that encounter. How 5 years to the day after my life had been shattered and remade, I could extend a hand to someone standing at the same precipice. The lottery ticket had revealed Christine's true nature and catalyzed my transformation. But the real winning ticket had been the one I'd written for myself in the aftermath. The permission to prioritize my own joy, to establish clear boundaries, to create a life that honored my worth independent of what I could give to others. That was a jackpot anyone could claim with or without $60 million. And sharing that particular winning ticket was perhaps the most meaningful way to mark this strange, beautiful anniversary of the day everything changed.